Good evening. This is Carla from MindPlore with Carla and Friends. And today we have a wonderful topic, validation of self, validation from people around you. Where do you need to be validated from? And having said that, I have an extremely amazing and wonderful panel. It's girl power today. I've been wanting to do it for weeks now, and things just weren't working out, and I decided this week and possibly next week will be girl power. So you guys have, the people who have watched in the past know Carmen I can't say her name. Don't say it. Thank you. And she's here to talk. She just did a trip around the country with her 6 kids, her dog, and her husband in an RV.
That's correct.
So you know she's quite amazing. We again have Jeannie here, who has been acting as co-host this month, mainly because it's been very difficult for Allison to do it, but I think I'm going to keep her on anyway. So she knows that now, and she's great. We have a new person, Kenny Avery, who came through Jeannie, but I also heard about her from another good friend. And she's going to be amazing. And of course, you guys know Asma, she's here all the time, off and on. And we are about to start that discussion on validation. And I'm passing the mic to you, Jeannie.
Great. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm looking forward to this conversation about validation. It's something that we all need to pay attention to, especially when it comes to the point where we validate ourselves and what we're doing, what our purpose is, and the way we show up in the world. And we've had some very interesting discussions over the past few weeks, so it'd be worthwhile to go back and listen. They've gone deep, and I expect this one will go deep as well. My favorite is that we're coming on this after spending last week talking about, do thoughts make up our world, or does the world make up our thoughts? So this is a way of directing your thoughts to add that positivity that you need, but more importantly, that confidence that we need when we show up in the world and make the difference that we're here to do. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how everyone can tell us bits and pieces, tips and tricks on how to increase our own self-validation and how to get the validation we need from others when we need it. Back to you, Carla.
I'm going to ask Carmen to continue right now because I need to correct an issue.
Yes.
Kimmy, don't worry about that right now.
Okay. So I'm really glad we were talking about validation. When Carla asked me to be on this panel and she told me what the topic was, I was really excited to talk about this because this is something that is very interesting and it's very different for each individual. And so validation, I mean, it comes from all sorts of places. There's external validation. You might need somebody to validate your performance, your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings. There's also internal validation. I mean, it comes from within. You know when you're doing a good job and you know when you have a right to feel an emotion or not. And so I think this is going to be, well, I'm certain this is going to be a really interesting discussion because people are wired so differently and validation is going to mean different things to different people. And, Carla mentioned earlier, I have 6 kids. I might go about validating each kid differently because they need a different form of validation in their lives. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion.
Excellent. And how do you define validation?
How do I define it?
Yeah.
I find that I look at it sort of from the direction of criticism and how we attack ourselves we definitely need, as women, more external validation. We are externally motivated typically. We feel the people around our space, we feel their energy, we feel their moods, and that impacts us inside. And then we have our internal dialogue, an internal voice that might beat us up anytime we're not perfect. So we have a lot to sort through in terms of how we can even get to validating ourselves, to acknowledging that we did a good job, or getting to a place where we don't actually need the external feedback from somebody. But it's really challenging for women typically. We have this voice in our head that beats us up every single day, telling us a better woman would be smarter, taller, thinner, a better mom, a better lover, a better, it goes on and on and on. And that attack that we have going on impacts our even ability to receive somebody's validation. Let's say our husband or our boss or a coworker says something really nice to us about something we've done. We might say, well, it was late, or did you see that typo, or did you see this pimple I have on my face? And we point these things out instead of receiving. So receiving validation is a big issue for us in terms of learning how to turn off that voice and receive it.
Okay. What about you, Kimmy?
Oh, that was me.
Oh, I mean,
That's okay. You're multitasking.
yes, I am multitasking because there's an issue going on that I'm trying to resolve. Carmen, I need the conversation flowing right now.
Gotcha.
So I can.
I'm on it. I gotcha, Carla. I gotcha. So, Kimmy, I really liked your point about receiving validation, because in the past, that's something I have struggled with and really had to put a focus to work on. And it's one of those things, like when you're growing up, you never think you're going to have to learn how to receive a compliment or learn how to receive validation, especially as a female, yet it's so true. And I've done in the past exactly what you said. Oh my gosh, you look great today. Thank you. But something to negate that compliment they just gave me. So something I had to work on is if someone gives me a compliment like, Carmen, you look great in this coral blazer today, I would just say, thank you.
Yeah.
Not, thank you, I got it on sale. They don't care. Not, oh, this old thing, I've had it forever. They don't care. Just say, thank you. And practice receiving that compliment and practice receiving that validation. And another thing I've worked on as well is that I want to spread the validation around, if you would. And so making a conscious effort to compliment somebody on something genuine. So I might say, Jeannie, you have a lovely necklace, because you actually do. I'm not going to, if I don't like it, I'm not going to compliment it. Do something genuine. Kimmy, your hair looks fabulous today, because it does. And just, just giving those compliments and giving that validation to other people with no other intention except to give them a compliment. You're not looking for one back. You're just looking to give that compliment and give that validation.
Well, and often not only do we deflect it, but we'll say, you'll say, oh, I like your hair. And I'll say, oh, well, I like your coat, which is a way of not receiving. So just being able to say thank you is such an important skill, because somebody is giving you a gift. They're acknowledging something about you, something you've done, something, that you put your colors together in a certain way, whatever it is, they're acknowledging you. And it's a gift to actually receive. And the way I look at it also, I think some of this is instinct, and instinct is related to survival. Being perfect in a woman's mind often is related to survival. We think that if we have it all together, if we're perfect, we will live. And that is a bit of it's kind of off-putting even. The most beautiful women I've met in my life, many of them are self-conscious, or, they have all kinds of things that they pick on themselves with. And that is not very attractive, actually. What's attractive is when somebody can receive, like I was saying, but also how I see it is it's more of a circle up here. And this is where spirit or God or goddess and consciousness lives. And this is where beauty lives. And beauty is this inner radiance that gives somebody the gift of receiving, is gracious, is able to truly know all the things that you're doing and putting yourself out there. Those are actually things that are your gifts, and recognizes that. And when you can spend more time here in this sense of beauty instead of in perfection, you're able to receive any kind of acknowledgement. And I actually don't even use the word validation that often with my clients, because it's more about stopping that inner voice. And that inner voice, her nickname is Psycho Bitch from Hell, because she's mean. And you can tell her voice because she's mean. You know, you write something. Oh, well, it could have been this way. It could have been better. Okay, well, maybe it could have been. There's a rational sort of evaluatory process that we can do that can hone our skills, and that's wonderful. But if it's mean and beating you up, that's not great. And one of my coaches, I actually have a lot of male coaches, because getting their perspective, like done is better than perfect. Right. If you actually get the thing done, then you can move forward to the next level. Then you have a baseline to work from. But often we're too busy capitulating in our head with this voice that keeps us from even getting things, like allowing ourselves to shine.
So it sounds to me, Kimmy, like we have an inner power struggle just as much as we have outer power struggles. And I think that, well, I can recall from a very young age being put in my place, if you will, when I would step up and say something, and it would be, you know, my parents saying, you know, young lady, sit down, you know, and I actually do remember hearing that children should be seen and not heard several times. My mother had 7 of us, and as a now as a parent of a grown child and gone through it, I kind of understand where she might have been coming from, because the cacophony in our house was off the charts. And I told her once that after raising my son, I was like, Mom, if all of us that you raised went through school today, they'd put us all on Ritalin, because we were so, you know, so smart and always, you know, pushing the boundaries and not sitting down, bouncing off the walls, whatever you want to call it. But I do recall being told to be seen and not heard. I remember being told with clenched teeth, which is funny because when I want to pull up a certain level of power, even now, I kind of go to the clenched teeth because that's what I was taught. But even in school, I was told that we should be humble. We should let others shine. We should help others shine, which allowed me to learn that I need to be in the background. And that's not necessarily good for you as an adult, where it might have been good for me as a child. So there's that psycho voice that you're talking about is somewhat part of the ego, which is trying to keep us safe. Sure. And once I understood that it was trying to keep me safe, and then I, and this is fairly recently, I try to remember to say, okay, I've got this. I'm an adult now. I can do this, because there is a voice that wants to keep us from shining. And if we shone, we would get shot. That's what it felt like. If I stepped out and sang the way that I used to sing, somebody would say, oh, you're flat. And, you know, it was devastating. The first time I went out on stage and I didn't do well, but all I got was criticism. So that kind of stuff goes into what the makeup of who we are. And we need to unlearn some of that behavior. It's okay to go out on stage and flub up, because then you start laughing and other people learn that you make mistakes and you get better. I mean, I actually was told once as a teenager that I couldn't sing. And 6 months later, I showed up to the same group and they accepted me, and I ended up taking over the group over the years, because the person who flat out told me I couldn't sing didn't take into consideration that some people have a bad day, try again. But I will tell you, I played my guitar badly and sang really loudly every time my dad made me angry. And somewhere in that 6 months, a different voice came out. And then I became, as I said, over the years, I became the leader of that group. It was a folk choir in church. And I remember that I had to go through those, what I call the squeaky clarinet days that my brother went through, when you can't get the air through the reeds and it comes out in that god awful sound. But we had to live through it as he learned. We have to remember that we need to learn. And when we learn, say, that was good. You learned something. Now let's take it to the next level and make it more about next level. But the other thing I wanted to mention is when we show up in the world, we don't know what other people are going through. I often will find myself with a relaxed face, but I know when I relax my face, it looks like I'm frowning, especially because I have this new wrinkle up here that when I'm relaxed, it really gets pronounced. So people think I'm frowning, and I go, no, I'm just relaxed. And what I've learned is to remember to smile more when I'm out, not because somebody said smile, you look better, but because I'm gracefully feeling serenity and peace. And then what I've learned is when I see somebody, like Carmen, like you mentioned, when I see somebody, I'll just say, I really like that on you. I may not know this person, I may never see them again, but I don't know what they're going through. And that little piece of external validation might make their world for the day. I know it started to make mine. When I learned to just say thank you, to smile and say thank you, that was difficult, but freeing, because then you could take in the validation and not be in your mind with the little squirrel running on the wheel saying, what can I say? What can I say? What can I say? It's not a give and take. It's a thank you and move forward. And that's a different kind of response, I think, that we have to learn to make, rather than if somebody says something nice, I have to say something nice. I'd rather just walk through the grocery store and say that to 3 or 4 dozen people, because I feel good at the end of it. I feel good because I've shared some positive vibes with people. And I realize that they feel good because somebody noticed them. We want to be heard. We want to be noticed. We want to make a difference. And when somebody just simply notices, that's great. That's on the external side. On the internal side, we need to get comfortable with allowing others to give us compliments, but to give ourselves compliments. I wore this shirt because I like this color. I don't care if anybody else likes the shirt. I like this color. But that's a behavior that's really hard to regulate from the outside. It's one of those, you got to go through it. You got to feel it. And then you have to have that switch go and say, oh, I can be nice to myself. Wow, I can be nice to myself. And when you're nice to yourself, you're nice to other people. And that's one of those moments where we change the people in our inner circle because we're bringing up their vibration, and we're changing ourselves because we're bringing up our vibration. And that then changes other people who are not even nearly related to us, because it's a ripple effect. Carla, you're back with us. How does this all sit with you?
Well, when I wasn't with you, I was hearing a little of what was being said, and everything is straightened out now. But when I think of validation, when I was a kid, I always looked outside. I looked at what my sister said, what my brother said, and what my mom and dad said. And because of that, although I know that they were loving and caring, I found myself being very degrading And I grew up thinking that way. Oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. I'm changing that whole thing. It developed a mindset that didn't help me realize what I could do. And I think there are a lot of people in the world who are going through that, making that change from I cannot to I can. And what I would like to ask all of these ladies, what are some practical ways of changing the negative to the positive and making it work? And by the way, it's on the page now, guys, ladies, I finally got it there. Maybe start with Kimmy, because we haven't heard much from her yet.
Sure. Well, first of all, for me, I work with men and women, and I teach women to learn to distinguish the internal voice that's critical, and that voice that will deflect any positivity that comes in. So it's literally training your voice to recognize that this voice is lying to you, because that voice is trying, on the positive intention is to make you better, because it's all about survival. So when you recognize that voice, then you can tune it out. And the voice that says, wow, I am doing a good job, or wow, I do look nice today, or I did something well, whatever that is, acknowledging that. And it's a training. I'm a relationship coach, and I also use neuro-linguistic programming. And two things are coming to mind. One thing, there's an NLP presupposition, which NLP is a set of tools that helps people to use their brains better to get better results in their life. So when somebody is experiencing feedback, they'll often perceive it as failure. So we can turn that around and recognize that it's feedback. And we can also learn how to ask for what we need. So recognizing that there's no such thing as failure, only feedback, is critical. That's one of my mantras all the time in my head. And then also recognizing that in order to move out in the world, I have to be able to be resilient. Any sort of affirmation, those are great, but it's even better if you can make that a belief change. So I believe I have something to share with the world, rather than I have something to share with the world. People want to hear me. That's great. But if you're not really feeling that vibration, it's going to feel phony to you. And if you recognize, like I use NLP to help people change their beliefs. So recognizing that it's just a belief, and then installing that belief in yourself, I have something positive to give to the world. My being here is a gift. And then the little things that you could criticize yourself for stop bothering you so much. On the flip side, when I work with men and women, and men will often say things in a really direct, clear way. They don't know that they're dealing with women who have these internal voices. So they'll say, wow, that's not a great dress on you. A smart man probably wouldn't say that. But women will want the external feedback. And my dad would always say, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. If I tell her what I really think, I'm going to hurt her feelings. If I lie to her, then that's not going to go well either. So I tell men to preemptively say something. Say something like, wow, you look great today. You don't have to point out, just as Carmen was saying earlier, you don't have to say something that's a lie. Let's say she's in a bag, like a paper bag and you don't know what to say but you're going out. Say, wow, I get to go out with you. You can be happy that you're going to spend time with your woman. And also, you've got to understand that this internal voice that she's got is beating her up all the time. So you get to be her hero by saying, you give a compliment, you look so beautiful today. And she sort of flinches. I ask guys, do you see that? And they're like, yeah, all the time. So she flinches because it feels like a lie to her because of that voice in her head. So you stop her and you say, I'm giving you you don't have to say this part, but men are giving their honest opinion. They don't want to lie. I see your beauty. You are beautiful to me. I want you to receive that. That voice in your head, she's lying. And when a man does this for a woman, you'll see her relax and receive. So it's important to be able to focus on being able to receive. And that's one of the biggest things. And also recognizing that voice. So you can say, stop. Because to me, the divine spark, the internal light in you, God's voice, if you will, whatever works for you, that voice is, you have a gift. You are a gift. That voice is telling you the truth.
And it's the voice that is telling the truth that we need to listen to.
That we need to amp up.
Right. And also, I think one thing I know that I have forgotten many times is that the voice that we're telling ourselves that make us feel happy and feel that light inside is the voice that we should be listening to. The voice of least resistance. And many of us think, oh, you're in a dream world. Don't do that. Look at reality. But the reality is what is within us. And I'm wondering how you ladies think about what I just said and give some feedback, because I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Carmen, you go first.
So I don't know about you ladies, but sometimes I feel like, in the cartoons where there's an angel on one shoulder and a little devil on the other shoulder. Sometimes that's my inner monologue. And the angel's like, no, you are awesome. You got this. And the little devil's just like, I don't know what you're thinking, but it's not right. And so it's just part of learning. I mean, that's really what it is, right? You have two little voices, one on each shoulder, telling you opposite things. And so when I hear those two voices that are conflicting, it's feedback. We were talking about feedback. There's no failure. It's feedback. All it is feedback. So sometimes it's as simple as just waiting a moment, listening to both and being like, kick the little devil off and embrace the little angel over here. And it's just a matter of, okay, it's okay to honor your emotions. I mean, a lot of times, especially with women, our thoughts are very emotional. I'm glad you mentioned NLP, Kimmy, because I'm a little NLP nerd as well. Ooh. And our thoughts are tied to our emotions. And so sometimes it's as simple as, I am frustrated with this, or I am angry at this, or I have some negative emotion about this, and saying, okay, you know what? It's all right to have that negative emotion. Let's honor it for a moment and then move on. That is extremely useful and extremely helpful in moving you from that negative state of mind, so the little devil over here, to the positive state of mind, the little angel over here that's talking to you. And over time, it does take practice. You're going to have more of those positive thoughts instead of those negative thoughts. We have something like 60,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of them are negative, and only 5% of them are new. So if you feel like it's a little bit like the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, just playing over and over and over again in your mind, guess what? You're right. And so just focus on listening to that positive voice more. You can do that by just acknowledging the negative thoughts and then pushing them out of the way, saying, okay, I felt that. I no longer feel that. I feel this instead. It's okay if you've been angry. It's okay if you've been frustrated. It's okay if you've felt down on yourself for whatever reason. You can move from there to a place of positivity.
It seems easy to do, but I have a third voice I call David Letterman. He's a bit snarky. And yes, David's been trying to get me to be more snarky more often, and I'm learning not to say what hits my mind first, because sometimes people don't understand snark the way that they should, because we all should. But what I find is yes, Carmen, we have 80% is negative, and that's reinforced every day. We get gigabytes, 34 gigabytes of information thrown at us through social media and media every day. And the majority of it is negative, and it's a waste of time. And we have to learn and step in and take control over what we put in our minds. And that's one of the things that helped me change the conversation in my mind. So it's okay to put Facebook into just family and friends, if that's all you want to hear from. It's okay to turn off Twitter, or to set up I think they call it a list of what you want. Like, I have a list of media friends that I'll look at what they're doing on Twitter, and that 15 minutes on Twitter is much more positive than looking at everything else that's out there. And God forbid if you look at the comments, because the comments devolve from supportive for the first maybe 2 or 3 to, whatever anybody's angry about, it comes out. So that tells me that we have a world that takes the easy way. And what does that mean? It's easier to be negative than it is to be positive. It's easier to accept negativity than to accept positivity. And you have to take an active role to look for the positive. So one of the things that I mentioned this before, one of the things that I learned was to breathe. The woman that coached me to change my life significantly, all she did was tell me, when you're at a stop sign, when you're driving your car, when you're at a stop sign or a stoplight, take 3 deep breaths all the way down to your toes. You make it kind of slow and deliberate. And what that does is it moves you out of fight or flight from the monkey mind, and puts you more into logical thinking. And that, I noticed one time I was driving with, my son was little, and there was somebody cut in front of me, and I normally would let out a 4-letter word, and my 3-year-old would start laughing and then say, "Mommy, you need to put $1 in the jar," because that was our joke. But this time it happened, and I looked at Chris and I said, obviously somebody needs to get somewhere 5 seconds faster than us. And he laughed, but I realized I wasn't angry. It wasn't going to hurt me that somebody else cut me off. And that's when I realized this deep breathing thing made a difference. And then I took it to the next level, working with my next coach on how to sit for 5 minutes and try to quiet the mind. And that statement is probably the most complex one anybody could ever try. Just try to quiet the mind. It's like she said, put your shoe in the middle of the room between us. Now try to move the shoe. You either move it or you don't. There's no try. But the idea that when somebody introduces you to meditation, which was what happening, they said, now try to quiet your mind. Every single voice I've ever grown up with popped into my mind. And there's no way in the world that I was going to quiet it. But I went back to breathing. And then there's that still quiet voice that we talk about that every once in a while you can hear, but you have to be breathing and quiet. And once you can do that, you can start looking at, what are the positive things? What are the things that are working? What are the things that I can share? I still believe that if I sit down to write a blog post, nobody wants to hear it. But if I can get into a space where I'm just kind of channeling, if you will, where I'm just quiet, I let I like monkey mind, that visual of monkey mind. I let the little chattering monkeys go. I go, you take a minute, you get it done. And then I start writing. There's a magic to that. And when I read it later, I go, who wrote that? Because it wasn't me. These things of being able to quiet your mind is a great tool. Deep breathing is a great tool. Understanding when you're in that fight or flight kind of mindset and the chattering is just going so crazy that you can't even know who you are. Learning to manage these things helped me to learn to validate that there's a reason I'm here on this earth. There's a reason Carla's here on this earth. Pulling this group together. If that's all you did, Carla, you did a great thing. But you do this twice a week with MindPlore, and you've got all these other shows. So there's a reason you're here. You're bringing really smart people together. And we may not think it's any big deal while we're doing it, but it just takes one person. And this is the other thing that helps me keep moving. It just takes one person accepting the message and changing. Just one person. That I've done my job. And if that person is me, great. Carla, you're waving. Hi.
I'm waving nicely. By the way, Ozma had computer issues and had to leave. It wasn't that she wanted to leave, but no, although she was helping me get through the crisis. Before you go any further, you were talking about thoughts, and I definitely am one who says take a deep breath, relax, and go forward, and I do that very often. However, I think we often forget that the thoughts in our heads are constantly going. It's like a river of thoughts. And people think of meditation as a way to, you got to get rid of these thoughts and you got to get rid of them now. And if you don't get rid of them now, you're not meditating and blah, blah, blah. But we need to remember that thoughts are a part of meditation. So when you become aware, oh, I'm thinking about the dog jumping off the bed and running around and barking while I'm meditating, that's fine. But when you become aware that you're thinking that, you come back to why you were meditating. You come back to the breath. So when you say, oh, I couldn't sit still for 5 minutes because my thoughts were going through my head, that's perfectly okay. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a part of meditation. It's a part of the whole scenario that we live by every day. So when I hear someone say, I can't meditate because I'm thinking too much, I'm thinking, no, you're doing the perfect thing. And you are acting perfectly. And instead of downgrading yourself because of it, uplift it. I had a thought this morning that I decided I'm going to produce more of my own quotes as well as everyone else. And I had a thought and I wasn't ready to write it down. When I was ready to write it down, I thought, what was it? I couldn't remember, but I came up with something different, maybe the same thing, who knows? But realize that flow of thought is a very normal thing. You're normal. If you didn't have thoughts going through your head, maybe you wouldn't be alive. Take a deep breath and calm the mind, use the mind. Carmen, you look like you want to say something.
I want to maybe circle back to something you said earlier, Carla. You were talking about, those inner thoughts like, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. And so I am a business consultant. I talk, all the fun numbers and strategy with my clients. I also work NLP in there. And one of the most useful things I've learned in NLP are language patterns and helping people identify exactly what they need. And so I'm going to give you an example with one of my children, and this does apply to adults too, because we're just children who are really good at being taller when you come down to it. Okay. So for most of us, some of us may be petite, but most of us are good at being taller. When one of my kids comes to me, and let's say like my boys are starting football today for the first time ever. If one of my boys comes to me and says, Mommy, I can't play football. And I'm going to say, okay, when people say I can't, it either means I don't want to, or I don't know how to. That's really what they're saying. So I will say, okay, well, do you not want to, or you don't know how to play football? And they'll say, well, I don't know how to play football. Well, that's a different conversation with my son versus I don't, sorry, I think I screwed that up. He says, I can't play football. I don't know how. Well, okay, good. I know you want to play football. So let's figure out how to teach you how to play football. And it kind of challenges their thinking. So when people say, I can't do something, or even if you're thinking, I can't do something, ask yourself those two questions. Is it that I don't want to do it, or that I don't know how to do it? Because then you can go through your thoughts and go through your thinking and meditate on it maybe and figure out, all right, well, what's the answer? Because the solution is going to be different. If you don't want to do it, then don't do it. Right?
That is
or delegate it.
That is brilliant.
If you don't know how, all right, how do I get the knowledge? How do I hack somebody else? How do I find a mentor? How do I read the book that's going to give me the answer? It's a very, very different solution based on what you're really saying. So challenge yourself, try it out. If you are thinking, I can't do it, ask yourself, is it that I don't want to do it, or that I don't know how?
That's a really good tip.
Mm-hmm.
To help us get through what I call the noise.
Yes.
Because in Carla, when I talk to people about meditation, I definitely tell them to let the thoughts flow through, because we're fishing every moment, every second. We're fishing through those thoughts as they go rushing through like a fire hose. We get to throw the line in and go, pick up this one, pick up this one. We're only aware of, I say 10%, because all my life I've been told we only use 10% of our brain. Well, I like to think we might be aware of 10% of our thoughts. And Deepak Chopra wrote about this and equated it to quantum physics, where he said the speed of thought is as fast as the speed of bosons and quarks. And if we can master our thought, we can change the world just as bosons and quarks change the world. Because material, and this is all paraphrasing, of course, because he's much better at it, but the material, whether it's the desk I'm sitting at or my hand, it's all bosons and quarks. It's how they materialize in the world. And if we can access our brain power and be more deliberate about those thoughts that we pick and choose, we can change how we see the world. And there is always going to be that fire hose of thoughts going through. And for me, meditation is allowing myself to calm down and to take those deep breaths and to get oxygen in my brain and to give myself 5 minutes of quiet. And if my mind chooses to race, I go, okay, you're going to race. I'm going to sit here quietly. But what happens, whether I sat there quietly or I was able to turn my attention away from those thoughts and have that quiet space, whatever happens, when I walk out of that 5 minutes, I'm a changed person. I may not bark at somebody because I'm frustrated, because I've given myself time to learn not to bark. Or I might walk out going, oh, I'm refreshed. I mean, literally in my corporate life, I used to take moments where I would grab a newsletter and go sit in the bathroom and read the newsletter so that I could focus. Because if I couldn't get away from people, I was interrupted all the time. I told my boss one time, I start my day with three things I'm going to accomplish. And she said, that's not much. How do you get everything done if you only focus on three? I said, I have 15 people who interrupt me throughout the day, the people that reported to me. They interrupt me throughout the day, whether I have one-on-one meetings with them or something's happening and they need a response right away. So I know if I put three things down, I'll accomplish those three things. And I'll have time to do what I'm supposed to do, helping my team. It's the same with your thoughts. When you sit down to meditate, you get to pick and choose what you're going to focus on. And when you pick and choose what you focus on, you're able to calm yourself down. So we find those tips and tricks. Carmen, you have 6 kids. So I'm going to say, I don't know how you find time to be alone, because I had one. And I did say to my mother who had 7, how the heck did you do this? I've got one and I don't have time. So just kudos, because you look sane and it looks like you're doing a good job because you're sane.
I have some secret hiding spots throughout the house that they don't know about yet.
But if you think about it, if you think about the kids, they're moving, they're running, they need attention all the time. That's our thought pattern. It's doing that all the time. So we still need to find those times to calm down, to quiet. And when we can calm down and quiet, we can accept the validation that others give us, and we can accept the validation that we give ourselves, because it's not being overrun by everybody else. The other thing is perspective. Somebody else's crisis doesn't necessarily become your crisis if you have the right perspective. Sometimes people come to us with a crisis, not for us to fix it, which is our inclination. Oh, let me fix it. I can take care of it. Oh, you need a sandwich. So my mother, you need a sandwich, just sit down. But it's not our job to fix everybody. But if you change your perspective, a simple change in how you look at it, and then you can ask them a question, what's really going on? Like you do with your son in football. Is it something you want, or is it that you don't want to do, or is it something you don't know how to do? If you can change your perspective and become that sounding board for the person in crisis, then you don't take on their crisis, and you can kind of calm down and validate them that there's a problem that they're learning how to fix. The hardest thing I did for my son when he was a teenager, when he was going through something, was to say, how do you feel about this? What do you want to do? And that changed our relationship, because no longer was I taking on his issues. And, I was letting him take on his issues. And as a mother, I wanted to be there and be everything for him, but I learned I couldn't. So he had to learn to solve a problem in his moments, but we could talk it through. And that's the kind of thing we need to do for ourselves. When we get those voices, and there's one, please laugh, because I'm going to tell you something. The devil that sits on my shoulder, I often call him Dad. Because my father's way of moving us forward was to say something that would challenge us. Like, I got 4.0 in school, all A's, and he'd say, you could do better. And he would try to challenge us, but he did it negatively, because that's what he knew. So that voice comes up with who the hell do you think you are to try this? Or why do you think you could do this? And it's, to me, it becomes a negative voice, but it's a challenging voice. So I changed it from negative to challenging when I called it Dad. And I could say, okay, Dad, I got this now. But changing perspective is not an easy thing to do, but it's a very positive, life-changing thing to do if you can do it. Yeah. So look at something from a different perspective. Look at, and it's just too easy to use this one. So, I'm going to say, we've got red and blue in this country right now. What we need to do is flip and look. What's the conservative say versus the liberal? But look at it from the conservative side. We're going to find in the majority of time that we agree on a majority of issues, because most of us are in the middle. We're the purples. That's why you picked that color, Kimmy. We're,
Why,
we're-
yes.
we're in the middle. We have things that we agree on, but we don't see it because we get so angry fighting on the fringes. And then we do that in our mind. And that keeps us from seeing the validation that others give us and that we could be giving ourselves. So that's why I like to quiet the mind so that we can see more clearly.
So I want to speak to that a little bit. There's always a positive intention behind every single thing that happens. Whether or not it's positive for you with another person is, debatable. But sometimes your partner will do something and it doesn't feel positive to you. However, if you look for the positive intention there, you can find it. The same is true whether you're red and blue politically, or you're two people in a conversation, or two aspects of yourself. There's an exercise that I take people through all the time called core transformation. And it's about getting people down to the essence of why that is important. From there, you've got this part of you wants happiness, love, joy, but it shows up by not getting your work done, let's say, because it really wants to garden. The other part of you wants to get your work done because it wants to shine your light to the world, and it wants happiness, love, and joy. These two parts are in conflict, but the essence is the same. When you get down to that core essence, then you can find what it is that really means something to you. And as you were saying, you mentioned something about needs a little bit ago. I think Carmen said this, but knowing what you need is essential. And as women, often we'll lead with what we're upset about. This isn't working. This hurt my feelings. This is wrong. It should be here. We come off to other people as an attacker instead of, they just hear the storm of upset. They can't find the essence of what you need. And usually my experience is there's nothing in a woman's nature to know what she needs until she's upset without it. So we maybe have expressed what we need over and over and over and over again in words that our partner can't hear or our boss can't hear. And then we say, I quit, or I'm out. But there's a need underneath there. And when you can sit quietly, as Jeannie was so eloquently saying, you want to sit quietly and let those thoughts, because they will happen. Don't expect your mind to just be silent. Think about them like little fluffy clouds going through. All those thoughts, you don't want to become attached to them, because then you go down a wormhole. It's about releasing them and releasing and releasing and sitting inside yourself and getting to the essence so that you can convey your message in a way that works, because it's what's really important to you. And that essence, what I really want is love, let's say. I want love in my life. I want connection. I want joy. I want vibrancy. I want happiness. Those are really important to me. How I get there may be different ways. And especially if we're working with other people, and if you don't want to live on the top of the mountain by yourself, which is not bad. I like it. I've done it before. If you don't want to do that and you want people in your life, you have to learn how to navigate this internal dialogue and get to the essence, and how to communicate what's important to you in a way that works. And it might be, honey, when you want to give me feedback because you're really good at being direct and clear, can you give me a heads up that you're going to say something so that I can sit down and receive it instead of deflect it? Honey, when you give me positive affirmation, that really gets me going. If I feel torn apart, I feel like sitting in the closet. You said something about your father, Jeannie, where he would make comments to you. My dad was a military man. And his comments always came from, let me tear you down so you're better. That's how the guys do it often. Tear you down to get better. Oh boy, does that not work with, with women. And I spent a long time trying to teach my dad how to say positive things. It didn't work because he doesn't think like that and didn't really have any interest in learning how to do that. Our relationship healed when I learned how to understand where he was coming from, take a breather if I needed to, go lock myself in the bathroom, breathe. What's my intention for this conversation? What is it I truly want in my relationship with my dad or my husband or anybody? Pausing is okay. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be right back. Getting yourself calm again, because you're the only one who can control your emotional state. Your response is your responsibility to somebody else's stuff. And yeah, you can trip into things because you're not expecting a reaction from somebody. But how can you reset yourself? And the more you practice meditation, it's just sitting quietly, looking at nature, allowing your brain to become quiet and not grasping on things, the more you practice that, you're set up for handling what comes. If in the middle of a chaotic situation and you've not been practicing, it's going to be a little harder to stop and pause and breathe. So taking that time for yourself so that you can get centered, come from a place of beauty. And I say beauty can be raw. Beauty can be powerful. Beauty can be intense, but it's authentic. And that whole, perfectionist thing, how am I going to say this? How am I going to do that? That makes it a little harder to come off authentically. So you want to be able to sit with yourself to be able to do that. I'm seeing a bunch of hands go. Jeannie, did you want to say something?
Carla does.
Or Carla. Sorry.
No, I understand. We are coming to the hour. So, and I love what you were saying, Kimmy. I really appreciate it. I appreciate what everyone has added to this conversation. Carmen and Jeannie, I think we've gone a long way, even with all the other things going on. Unfortunately, I need to end the show because the English show is in half an hour. I want to thank you, ladies, for being here today. I'm so excited to have a girl power again. Haven't had it in a long time, and I plan to have more. And thank those who have been watching. We really appreciate it. It may have been a little challenging because we went off air at a point and then needed to go back on, or I think we did. In any case, thank you so much, ladies, for being here. Thank you all who have watched, and we will be back with MindPlore on Thursday. Jeannie, I know will be with me. I don't know who else, right? Well, I have some ideas of who else. And we will speak more on validation. But don't put yourself down because someone said something negative to you, folks. Remember, flip the switch to where the light is. And you'll find that you are enough just as you are. Everything is right about you. Can we wave goodbye, ladies?
Bye.
Bye.